Hi everyone, and welcome to the second webinar of NextGen's Enhancing Your 2020 Vision webinar series. I'm joined tonight by Adrian from Collaborative Employment Solutions to chat to us about business development and planning. I'm also joined by my co-host, Kate Winky from the rural city of Murray Bridge and Annalise Gates from Regional Development Australia, Murraylands and Riverland. For anyone new, NextGen is an initiative of Regional Development Australia, Murraylands and Riverlands and is supported by the rural city of Murray Bridge. The Enhancing Your 2020 Vision series is focused on looking at reflecting on not only what we can learn from the last 6 months, but also check in with how we can be more effective in what we do going forward. We know our region has access to a wealth of knowledge and capabilities, and we have decided to shift NextGen into a space that can be a resource for knowledge sharing and personal growth. Over the month of July, we'll be bringing together 4 different topics and looking at how we can enhance ourselves and our business in a 2020 context. Last week, we had a chat about communications and marketing with Courtney Blacker. This week, we will be focusing on business development and planning. At the end of July, we will also chat about navigating challenges and being courageous in chaos and how we can also lead with impact and influence into the future. Before we move into today's webinar, I do want to highlight the importance of seeking additional opportunities and doing that through different types of programs that are available for you. Regional Development Australia, Murraylands and Riverlands does actually have 2 other initiatives as well as NextGen. We are hoping to bring you plenty of opportunities with NextGen, but I also want to talk about these 2 as well quickly. The B2B program and the Experts in Residence program are 2 separate initiatives designed to help businesses upskill themselves and grow their business capabilities. The B2B program gives local businesses and anyone looking to start a business access to expert advice and services, allowing business owners and entrepreneurs to feel comfortable that they are making the correct business decisions. The program helps businesses to identify where they have opportunities and barriers and how experts or different industry professionals can best assist to overcome them. The program has a small fee associated and it provides 3 hours of consultancy as well. The Experts in Residence program is an initiative of RDAMR and PIRSA that provides access to fully funded, confidential and one-on-one appointments with industry experts from across Australia. These experts have global networks and they bring their knowledge into the Murraylands and Riverlands for businesses to access. The program has 6 key themes: agtech, insights and adoption, food and agri-tourism, brand and marketing, supply chain management, marketing access and development, and business growth and success. There is an upcoming webinar to learn about what this program does and how the experts involved can help you as well, which will be coming up on Tuesday, the 4th of August at 1 p.m. You can find out details on both of these programs, the B2B and also the Experts in Residence, on the RDAMR website if you are interested. I'm more than sure that Adrian will elaborate when in business how important it is to dedicate your time to growing and enhancing your skills and capabilities. Whether you choose to do this through professional development, workshops, further study or mentorship, the opportunities are endless. I encourage anyone who has sought out these additional opportunities to share their experiences and let us know either in the chat box or send us a message on our socials so we can share them with everyone else too. Now to the main event of the evening, we are excited to introduce you all to Adrian from Collaborative Employment Solutions. Adrian is a mentor within the B2B program, as I just mentioned before, and he is a very experienced managing director of his own consultancy business. He is highly regarded for his deep working knowledge of business solutions, administrative law, industrial relations, and human resources. That is quite a list you have there, Adrian. He will be presenting to us on the topic of business development and planning. I encourage you all to please use the chat box as we go. I will try my best to integrate the questions in. I also ask everyone to keep their microphones on mute and cameras off. We will be recording this session for viewing at a later date as well. You'll all have access to this link to share and re-watch as you wish. Welcome, Adrian.
Thanks very much, Catherine. I'd like to welcome everyone in. I noticed we had Christy join us, so we've got a couple of people involved today, and recognise that we meet on the land of the Ngarrindjeri people here today. The Aboriginal people have had a long history in country around the Murraylands. They've got a really good understanding not only of land but also of the way to work together, so we can learn from them, both the past but also the current people. So thanks for joining us. It's really challenging when you start a business to know how to go to the next step, because most people start a business for a reason, and the reason is because they want to do something different, or they've got something special that they'd like to contribute in their own unique style. And the first step in any business planning is, we've got another person joining, is to really be clear about what your value is to business or a business opportunity. What's unique about you? And I might move now on to the presentation. We can provide this to people so that you don't feel like you need to take notes. Of course, you're very welcome to. But if you do take notes, feel free to come back to me if you've got any questions. So you've really got to understand who you are, what your value is, what your set of values are, and that unique contribution you make. People are very clear about following others who are authentic. And with social media and a fair number of ways that we can connect with people these days, people are also very much have their radars up for someone who's not who they present to be. And my first step, whether it's actually in business or working in a not-for-profit organisation, or even if you're an employee, you've got to be really clear about what your values are, what you'll stand for, and the sort of things that you won't accept. And don't be afraid to assert those values in the way you do your work. And business is the same. We always think that the client is always right. Sometimes the client is right in that they have a view or a concern they want to articulate with you, but it doesn't mean you've got to adopt all of their values either. The client is right to get your attention and to be treated with respect, and for you to consider that in a way, a framework that allows them to feel that they're valued. But you mustn't weaken your own position or values in things, because you'll find in the end that that'll show. The second thing is you've got to be really clear, and it sounds like an obvious thing, and that is what is it that you are trying to deliver in business? Why are you going into business? If it's simply because you want to get away from working for someone else, you've got to be really clear that you've got something worth contributing, and also be very clear about how you manage yourself, because there won't be any boss to help guide you through it. If it's because it's something unique that you know that the market is looking for, make sure that you're ready from day one to deliver it, and don't enter that market until you're prepared, because you sometimes get one chance at this. So those two comments that I make are the sort of things that occupy your mind, perhaps at night, over weekends, or in any sort of conversation you have with a mentor or your partner or whoever it is that you might be engaging in business with. And until you've sorted that out, there's no real value in going much further. But assuming that you're clear on that, and then what we want to do is you want to actually articulate these values in a way that other people can see them. And to give you some guidance on that, let me just take you through the values that we have at Collaborative Employment Solutions. It's like a vision statement. Now, I know we've all watched things like The Office and we've cringed about people doing vision statements, but it's really important that you know very clearly and can repeat with confidence and with clarity what your business is all about. So to help you, I've just got the guiding points that we have for Collaborative Employment Solutions. We're consultants, so we're there to assist people, and we provide a strong and professional and ethical approach to giving advice and assistance. So that tells you something about our values. It tells you something about the service you'd expect. It'll be professional, which implies timely, courteous. It'll be ethical, which means that we'll treat you with respect. We're not here to do dodgy deals on behalf of people. And we're giving advice and assistance. We're not directing you. We're not taking over your business. We're not telling you what to do. And that comes through later when we talk about the fact that we work collaboratively. We also work in parallel with what you're trying to achieve. We don't run in and tell you, you must do it now because it suits our purpose. We tell you that we have learned some things, but we advise you to build that into your operations. So for us in business, a key part of it is doing the reverse of what I'm doing today, and it's listening, finding out what your business is about, and then guiding my messages accordingly. This is the bit around the name, collaborative, and that is working with you or building your organisations or your teams, if you're a larger organisation, to formulate an approach, something that you, as the business, as the not-for-profit, end up owning. Consultants are valuable for advice, they're valuable for providing frameworks, but at the end of the day, the consultant gets to walk away. And so it's important that what we've left behind has built the capacity of your organisation. And the other thing is, you'll probably engage us as a company because you've got a problem or because you're starting out. There's a specific thing you need us to assist you with to resolve. Our approach is to forward plan and build your capacity and your responsiveness to the things that might actually occur in the future. So we always say, we're helping you to fix your solution on the issue you've raised today, but we've got an eye on the future, which is why it's collaborative employment solutions. It's a plural thing. So that gives you an idea of, that's our values mixed into or blended into a vision statement. You will have something considerably different to that. But the beauty of doing that work is that when we came to put our own presence out on social media, whether it's through LinkedIn or Facebook or Snapchat, or particularly when we're developing a website, we've got consistent language that we can put up front so that people know what they're doing. So I'm going to keep moving, and if you do have questions, I'll rely on people to identify that, Catherine, in the first instance. So where do we come around with planning? Well, planning or success doesn't come about by luck. There's that famous quote from Gary Player, who was a world-class golfer, who used to say, you know, I find that the more and more that I train and prepare, the luckier I get in my golfing game. And the point is that you don't get it without that. So you've got to be intentional about your planning. You've got to really want this to happen and make decisions that you are going to follow through on. You've got to set clear and achievable outcomes. One of the things about being particularly a sole proprietor or a beginning partnership is, what you need is not only a sense of clarity and direction, but you want some hope. And nothing kills hope quicker than setting these unachievable goals that you don't meet, so that you think in 6 months we've wasted our time. It's really good, as it is when you're an employee, to get feedback that suggests you're making successful application of your time and perhaps your money. So make sure your goals are achievable and measurable.
Do you have a way, I suppose, to help people in setting those achievable goals? Because I know that sometimes that can be one of the biggest challenges, is knowing what's achievable and what is unachievable.
That's a very good point. And Catherine, what I suggest to people is, when we meet or when we're doing this planning process, what does it look like for your business in 6 months of operation? How comfortable will you feel after being in business for a year with these achievements? But what are you really wanting to do in 5 years' time? And if you use those sorts of lens, if you like, and you map it out in that way, you're more likely to be structured. And most people think about where they want to be in 5 years. They're dreamers and they want to start off with that. So you bring them back. And you make sure that in the first 6 months, there'll be something that they can say, even if it is just consolidating their planning and being clear about their direction, that's an achievement.
Yeah. Do you think that, because you're talking a little bit around 5 years, but then also 6 months, do you reckon there's real value in maybe even setting out a 6-month goal, a 1-year goal and a 5-year goal?
Indeed.
And then try to work towards them?
Indeed. And for those of you that have had previous experience in planning, whether it's for performance development, even things like work health and safety, you'll know that you end up with these broad goals that you set down into a series of less significant, perhaps subsections.
Yeah, break them up.
And you break them up and tick them off. At the end of each week, you should be able to have a goal that you've set, that you've achieved.
Yeah, great.
So the next thing would be to make sure that you've established a process so that you can both implement this. You know, part of planning is to actually work out a way of putting it in place. And the other thing that's so essential is to review it. You should find time, particularly in the early stages of your business development, to review what you've done. That's partly that success I was talking about, but it's also to make sure that you're on track. And don't be afraid to change things as things change. Anyone who established a business in the hospitality industry in January would have known, sadly, of the need to be agile and flexible in reviewing in these goals, because COVID-19 came along and changed their place in the market. So that's the importance. Don't let the business plan be too rigid, because not only will you feel a sense of failure, but you actually won't be able to be agile enough to take opportunities on as they come in.
Yeah, definitely.
And the last thing is, in a practical way, use both long-term and I say weekly planning. Most of us work in a cycle. If we've been employed before, we work in a weekly cycle. You might do it monthly. I don't really mind, but it's got to be fairly regular, present and upfront. And put it in your diaries. The beautiful thing about a range of systems, whether it's through Apple or Microsoft, is they've got these diary planner tools that make it easy. Each one of you using your mobile phone's got that. You can just set some dates, and it just gives you a gentle reminder of where you were supposed to be at. It's such an important thing. You can do it at 2 in the morning, and you're not going to offend anyone other than your partner who's trying to sleep. And you'll find that you've actually set out your goals in a really structured way. Okay, so how do we go about it? What's the tool to use? Well, the good thing here is the government's here to help. The Australian government has put together a business plan template. It's certainly one that if you've got a connection with business to business or the RDAMR, I'll get it right, regional development, I should just say, you'll have seen this because they rely on this. A business plan template helps guide you through the information that you'll need. And let me just talk a little bit about that if I can. If I can just take people through. Now, are you able to display this on the screen for us, Catherine?
I can definitely try. Let me switch my screens. Okay, that should be displaying a Word document now.
Okay. And this is available. In fact, we can send it out for people later. It's something that there is no copyright on. It's done by the Australian government. The key thing they ask you to do when you're using this is to do your research. Make sure you understand certain things about your business before you start. Determine what you're going to use your planning for. It might actually be as simple as a funding application. Regional Development Australia is very good about putting out the funding opportunities. There's a number of websites that of course have grant opportunities, and all of them will ask that you provide a business plan, and this template's a very useful one. It might be that you've got a meeting with the bank or another financial institution and they want to see it. It may simply be that you want some guidance and structure in working with your new business partner. It's got a number of advantages. You'll see it's a very long document. This one runs for 42 pages. You don't have to fill them all in. If you're applying for grant funding, you may have sections that you need to complete. Only complete the sections that are relevant to you and help you in your planning. And as I've said many times, don't forget that business planning and reviewing go hand in hand. So factor in time to review this. Should not be a static document that you put a lot of effort in and then you file away somewhere in your system. In the old days, we'd say put it on the bookshelf and forget about it. And get a professional to help you. Now, the professional might be someone like me, someone who's got skills across a number of areas, or it could be someone who provides specific expertise you don't have. It might be an accountant or someone who can help you with the finance. So find out where your weakness is, and the template will identify that when you're actually trying to document things, and get the expertise in that helps. So let's just go through. We can go back to the screen if you like, back to the presentation. Let's just go through the key things of the areas that we need to take into account. So the first thing is the actual business itself. So some of this is as basic as getting your business registered. You won't get any work unless you've got an ABN. You've got to be registered with the Australian Taxation Office. Depending on your turnover, if you've got a turnover greater than $75,000 a year, you'll need to be registered for the GST as well. There'll be things that you need to do with your business structure that relate to things like workers' compensation. In South Australia, that's the Return to Work Corporation. There'll be things around insurance that you'll need to consider. Even when you go and speak at places, you often need to have public liability insurance. It's a whole range of things. Accountants are pretty good at collecting this for you, or people like myself. There are a number of places on the web where they can gather this information. Even the Australian Taxation Office has a number of resources. There's a fair bit of work. It's tedious and it's precise. Don't do it late at night. The second thing around that is to consider risk and risk management. We'll talk about that later today. Risk management's really important in business planning, and we'll come back to that later. The other obvious thing is, if you're going into business, is you want to sell your products, you want to sell your expertise, you want to grow your commercial organisation or your not-for-profit out in what we call the market. And if you don't understand the market you're going into, eventually your business will fail. And the market is your client base. So the market will listen to you in the form they want. It might well be that social media is the best way to communicate with your market. The good thing about social media is, particularly again if you use some commercial communications people, is there's a tremendous amount of information already picked up that you can rely on. They've got these profiles where they use algorithms. That's why in year 9, 10, 11 we learnt that in maths, that actually can predict what people are looking for. And they're valuable tools. You may not understand it, but you can buy that in quite an affordable way, particularly through social media. The Australian Bureau of Statistics are also very helpful. They'll tell you the age cohort of the people in the region that you're operating in. They'll tell you about the employment levels. They'll tell you about income levels. They'll tell you about housing levels, whether people own their own home or they're renting. They'll tell you a little bit about their cultural backgrounds, a whole range of things that they've already at your taxpayer expense pulled together. And again, if you spend a little bit of time, they do some training and they have these things that are quite specific where you can get information. Some of it can be a little dated because it relies on census information. There's other information that they are doing quite regularly that may only be a few months old. But it's really important. Spend your time understanding your market and spend your time understanding how your market wants you to behave with them.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's really insightful and great to reiterate. That was another thing that Courtney mentioned last week around understanding your target market. It's one of the most valuable things, as you just said and as Courtney said. So Yeah, I think that's great.
And be aware of what people find attractive. If you're operating in a space where you're in the tourism sector, or you might be in agriculture, horticulture, people would expect that you've got an understanding of the impact your business is having on the environment. They'd also, particularly these days, look for you to have some respectful engagement. Firstly, with the regional businesses, that you're connected with them, you know what's going on in the region, and also with the Indigenous people, or the people who see themselves as the owners of that land. It's really important that your documentation, your website, your media presence actually reflects some of that. And be aware that knowing the market doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be fearful if there's a lot of competitors. That's all the value of doing that SWOT analysis, you know, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Because sometimes there can be an opportunity in a saturated market for someone who actually is better at listening to customers, better at providing the unique thing that someone else does or does not provide. This is why it's so important, Catherine, that you understand yourself and the unique contribution you can make.
Yeah, definitely. It always comes back to your unique contribution too.
It does, it does. The future, I find the future really important in this planning. The vision statement we've already discussed. Having a mission statement that people can actually pick up, I'll talk about it later as your elevator pitch, that they know what you're on about, what you stand for, and also setting those goals and objectives, which is what we've talked about earlier, and having that action plan, converting dreaming into reality. These are very important around that section on the future. I think this is the market, the future. These are non-negotiable areas that you've got to complete. And then the one where you might draw in some expertise, you might get someone who's a generalist like me to help you with a bit of budgeting, a bit of forecasting in terms of where you think you might need to be. Or you might need expertise that's specific to people who've got bookkeeping or accountancy skills, because you actually need to get funding from a financial institution, or even you might even be going out to investors, and they'll want to know that you've gone down to that granular level of understanding. Nothing looks worse than a presentation and a pitch, and then you ask them to invest in what you're doing and you stumble over the figures in the finance. So whilst you might get an accountant or someone to prepare it for you, if you're not confident, get someone like me to help interpret it, or spend time with your accountant until you can explain it to a 4-year-old, as we often say. Because once you've got it to that level of understanding, any investor, any financial institution will have confidence you know what you're doing. So that's the business tool. And I can't go past that template. I think it's a really useful one. It is lengthy. It will tease out a whole lot of things you hadn't thought of. And again, only do the bits that are relevant that you need at the time. But keep it as a dynamic document. Come back to it from time to time. So we're now looking at the business structure. It's really important, if you're a not-for-profit, that you actually have a constitution and you have a governance structure in place. In fact, the Incorporations Associations Act require you to do so. But if you're a small business, you're either a sole trader, a partnership, or a small developing company, it's also equally important that you have a clear understanding of your governance. Some of this is really important for taxation and investment reasons, but a lot of it's important when you come to the Australian Securities Commission, because they will require you to have not only a registered business, but an understanding of who the business partners are. And there's some requirements around that that actually go well beyond the day-to-day activities. You also need to know, if you're in a partnership, who brings what unique talents and who gets to make what decisions. Don't stifle yourselves, but at the same time, a lack of clarity can lead to not only strained relationships, but a business collapsing. And develop what I call an elevator or a marketing pitch. The elevator pitch, of course, is when you're going from the ground floor to the 5th level, you only get about, 30 seconds to get it across. Because you've just walked in and you've seen an investor, you've seen the mayor, you've seen a local identity or the banker that you need to have a few minutes with, and you say, "G'day, my name's Adrian, I run a consulting business and we're really keen about developing regional people and making their businesses succeed. That's why I'm here today." Something that rolls off the tongue really quickly that you feel confident about. Don't use other people's words. Again, it goes to your authenticity, but under pressure you'll stumble and you'll look foolish. Use your language that connects to your values, to the reason you're in business. Practice it. Practice it with your family, with your friends. Practice it in front of the mirror. Get it so that it doesn't matter whether they wake you up in the middle of the night or you get surprised because Bono from U2's just arrived in the lift and you got that one chance in a lifetime to impress them. Have your elevator pitch and then make sure that language is consistent elsewhere. When they find you on the website, they'll see it again. When they find you in LinkedIn, they'll find that language. This is what marketing people hammer all the time. I now want to talk about law. I just want to pause for a minute just to ensure through the chat whether there's been any questions or anyone. If you had a question, take yourself off mute. I don't mind you throwing in. Otherwise, I'm going to talk a little bit about the law.
Yeah, definitely. If anyone does have any questions, we do have the chat box. Adrian and I can see it, so please do feel free to add anything in and we can try to integrate them in as we go.
Okay, well, I'll take that as no one having a burning question. But if you do, let us know and we can follow up later. So the thing about the law is you've got to understand what bit of the law applies to you and what's required of you. When I worked at the Ombudsman's office, we had overview of 126 government agencies and statutory authorities, which was around about 160 separate acts of Parliament in South Australia. Let me tell you, that's not the full extent of the legislation in South Australia. And then you have something that probably trebles when you come to the federal sphere. You will waste a lot of time and an enormous amount of money, particularly if you engage a solicitor, to track through all the law to find out what is relevant. That's where someone like our business can help you because we know what applies. And the law is broken down to two parts. One is what we call statute law, and they are what we pay our politicians to do, and that's to enact various bills through the legislative processes. Some of it's done locally through government regulations at the local council level. Most of it is done either in the South Australian Parliament or in the Commonwealth Parliament. A couple of acts that are relevant. One of them I just mentioned a minute ago is if you're a not-for-profit, that's you're a community-based organisation. If you're doing something to assist people and you're not doing it with a motive to actually generate profit for you personally, you can still be profitable but not a personal profit, then you'll be covered by the Associations and Corporations Act 1985 of South Australia. But there's a really useful handbook that the Local Government Association and in fact a lot of organisations have around constitutions and what you're required to do. It's worth looking at that. And each one of you as a small business operator, this might be useful learning because you'll probably end up putting yourself on a board or a committee. You might end up running for local government. And it's interesting how few people understand this and how valuable you'll make yourself, which is another string to your bow. There's a range of acts of Parliament, both state and federal, that relate to staff conduct. Anti-discrimination. We broadly cover that in South Australia by the Equal Opportunity Act. Federally, that covers the Disability Discrimination Act, the Age Discrimination Act, the Sex Discrimination Act, the Race Discrimination Act. There's a General Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission Act. In other words, there's a whole range of things, and they cover things including sexuality, and in some states and territories, things like people's union membership and so on. There's also the Fair Work Act. There's a federal and state version of that. The Fair Work Act, I think, has around about 600 section, so I just won't read through all of those at the moment if that's okay, but it's very comprehensive and it has a whole range of obligations, not only on employees, not only on unions, their associations, but also employers. That also picks up legislation around bullying and harassment, which, as we know, is a concern in many workplaces. By the way, that also applies to volunteers, not just employees, and it applies to contractors. And there's even legislation now that covers whistleblowers and the protection they get, which might mean that if you have an employee or a contractor or even a volunteer or trainee who's working in your business and they see something that is unlawful that's occurring, there are restrictions in what action you can take against them in terms of identifying that publicly. Work health and safety. The good news is that work health and safety legislation has actually been applied consistently around Australia. It's what we call harmonisation of legislation, and that was done in recent times. So that but the bad news is each state actually has its own Act of Parliament, and the Commonwealth Act of Parliament might apply as well. It is very detailed, it is very prescriptive, and there are lots of requirements that flow for employers and organisations, and they end up holding the managing director of that organisation legally responsible. So you can't avoid it by delegating it to your accountant. You need to know some of this stuff. The other way we deal with law is what we call contract or the common law, and this is the law that's been developed through the courts. And you might be aware that we have different levels of courts. In South Australia, we have the Magistrates Court, which you might end up with if you have a fine or a traffic offence, or if you're trying to get money back from someone who owes you a small amount of money. There is the District Court, which is there for a whole lot of civil disputes where people are suing each other or someone's breached a copyright. And then on top of that, there is the Supreme Court, which is, by its very nature, the highest level of the court in each state and territory. And the Supreme Court also engages around a lot of the criminal law. We also have, of course, the High Court of Australia, which is the ultimate point where you can appeal issues. And there are some decisions of the High Court of Australia that have application to people in business, particularly around employment law. Contract law has been evolved over literally hundreds, and in some cases thousands of years. But what it leads to is the common understanding that occurs when you engage with a supplier, when you engage with an employee or a subcontractor, or when you engage with a customer. And you don't need a lawyer to establish some of those relationships, but that's where, if you're selective, it may be useful to get legal advice around that. And the other big issue around the law is managing risk. Each of those Acts of Parliament that I've identified have risk issues that you need to take into account. Every business in South Australia would be well advised to have a work health and safety statement and policy, and to have an anti-discrimination and anti-sexual harassment policy in place. You're not going to be inspected and fined if you don't have one, but what you're doing is you're running a considerable risk in engaging in a business without it. Similarly, I can provide you with a suite of policies, procedures, and local operating implementation instructional guides that might go well beyond your budget or the size of your business. And you'll make the decision on how much you need on the basis of the risk that proposes. And when you're applying for any funding, or if you're simply just engaging with your customer base and you're developing your market, risk becomes one of the significant things you need to monitor as part of that planning process. Again, we could do a whole segment on this. I'm not planning to do that today, but it really is important, and it's becomes something where a lot of people are specialised. Again, it's something that my business can offer you. So let's talk about how we convert these obligations into policy. Policy really is nothing more than the public or the community getting an understanding of what your position is on something. Procedures are the things that allow you to implement it. Sometimes your customers need to know that. Your terms and conditions might be something that is procedurally based. But generally speaking, there's a balance between having policy that you put on your website or that you might send to prospective customers or to investors, and procedures that are internal. Fulfilling your obligations, whether it be on the basis of funding or law, is often distilled in a documented way, and that's where we come in. Most recently, organisations will know that they have to have plans for COVID-19. If you have any engagement with people on a frontline basis, if you have any contact, if you go to anyone's homes, if you bring people in for a seminar, or even if you transact using cash or any other contact point, you have to have a COVID-19 plan. Again, there are some really good resources for this. I think Regional Development Australia have resources for this to help people through, and it's something our business is specialised in.
Yeah, we do have a web page on our website which directs you to the more, I suppose, trusted places to go. So Business SA, all of the Australian government websites. So yeah, so all of those resources are available.
Thank you. Work health and safety is an example I've talked through. Customer complaints. It's not that just that we live in a litigious age, we do, but it's really because customers will often engage with you if they feel confident that they'll have a way of voicing their concerns and being heard. Complaints and feedback are arguably some of the most effective ways you can learn how to improve your business and how to grow your business. It's really important to have a process to articulate that and learn from that. And also the staffing issues that come up. People are a great resource, they're a great sense of inspiration and hope, and they're a great sense of frustration and angst. And having plans in place through policy to manage individual grievances or staff conduct, the way in which you want them to behave or engage with your customers and the community is vital. Just to give you a sense, Catherine, of how we might do this, is to actually do it in a visual sense. So this policy map, this is just a very rough and a very basic one, is where we show how we might break that down.
Yeah.
That's for the basics. You'd have an anti-bullying and a harassment policy, you have a work health and safety policy statement, that you'd have both of those visible for staff and customers. And then underneath that, you might develop something around performance management to get the best out of your staff and your contractors. What happens if people get injured? How do you learn if there's been an incident, either a customer's raised an issue or there's been an accident on site? And how do you prevent that from happening in the first place? All the way down to certain forms that you might need to develop so you can get some immediate feedback and have these on your website. Or it might be how you go about shaping your business. So if you're in the market for getting customers in the traditional sense, you might have terms and conditions so that when they buy a trip or an experience from you, they know what they're going to expect from you in return. They might need to book ahead and you might want money from them because you want to have a cash flow and you want to not give away a trip to someone who doesn't turn up. Again, they'll want to know whether you have refunds and what the arrangements are on that. Or if they have a bad experience, do they get anything back? What happens if COVID shuts down your business and you've booked months in advance? And then these other policies, and one of the ones I mentioned before around complaints and customer feedback is really essential, but also inducting your staff and inducting people who might be new to your business, new partners, or people that are coming along as contractors or subcontractors. And privacy. People want to know what you do with their information. Every time they make a payment through credit card, they want to know how securely is that stored, and they want to be clear about what to do if they think they've got an issue. All the way through to having engaged with you in business or through a community centre, they don't want to be hit with a whole lot of spam from someone that you've sold your details to in a public sense that are private.
Yeah.
And the last thing might be how to develop your business. And this is the stuff I'm talking about. Risk management, setting your goals and an action plan to implement it. Having your environmental strategies or the values of what your business stands for. Having done that competitor analysis and the market gaps and work out where you fit in. And then the things that flow from that. A marketing strategy. This is the intentional part of it. A communication strategy. How often have we heard that good intentions fail because they weren't communicated? Been doing all this work for a client and they ring up after a month and they complain that they've heard nothing from us and they're really annoyed and they're not going to pay the bill. And what they didn't appreciate is the amount of work you did is you'd failed to communicate it, to keep them informed. So that's just some examples around how I could have a conversation that we're having today and put it for those visual learners or those people that actually want something to take away.
Yeah, definitely. Those visuals are great, and I know that I'm a visual learner, and as Adrian said before, we will make those slides and those visuals as well available, so I'll send those out to everyone along with the reporting, and they are something that, you know, you can change them, you can adapt them, make them into your own.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what I've given you there as a sample, we would go through and do that. And when I'm doing that with people, I also cost it accordingly. How much will it cost you to get each one of these done?
Yeah.
And therefore, what priority do you need in your business? What do I see as your risk, but also what does your budget allow for? That's all part of that process.
Right.
Thanks, Catherine. We're just about towards the end now, and we're talking about a really important thing. When you work for someone, if you work in a large organisation, or if you're part of a well-established community-based not-for-profit, you will often have people that will supervise you or assist you. When you go out into business, it's a very lonely experience. And of course, part of the problem is that you don't want to tell everyone your new ideas or your financial requirements or your vulnerabilities, because that commercial information is sensitive. It can be your undoing.
You want someone that you can trust.
Absolutely. And you want someone that you can talk to in that expression we call warts and all. You want to be able to say, look, I really think I got this wrong. Sometimes people can help you analyse that so you don't fail again. You learn from it. Other times they can reassure you that actually that's a common experience. So I'm a great believer in getting professional advice, whether it's a generalist like me or that specific advice, legal, accounting, risk, and having a mentor. And mentors come in different shapes and forms. There are some of them that actually will be in a financial relationship with you. And if you're a business coach like I am, that's what will occur. They might be someone who encouraged you to go into business, a family member, a friend, but someone who's been there before, whom you can have a coffee with, who you can ring up at 10 o'clock at night and say, I've had an awful experience with a customer and I don't know how to resolve this. But you must put aside time to do this. And part of that is dedicating time to marketing your business. The best bit of advice I had was from one of my early mentors, was to say, doesn't matter how busy you are, Adrian, no matter how many clients you've got, always set aside at least 1 hour every week to meet with a prospective client, someone you haven't reached out to for a while, someone you've connected with through LinkedIn or through social media, and have a coffee with them. Meet them at their business premises. These days you can do it by Zoom or Teams. And just practice your elevator pitch with them. Tell them what you think you can offer them and listen to the problems that they've got. And store it in the back of your mind. It might be 6 months or even 2 years later that you connect with them as a client, but you've actually done the hard work. The difficulty with business is you don't know where your next client is coming from. The beauty of planning is you can help guide that along. I say to people, if you've gone into business and you expect to work a 30-hour week or a 35-hour week or even a 40-hour week, then to quote the castle, tell them you're dreaming, because it's not going to happen. You'll spend a lot more time in your business than you may have ever spent as an employee. Sometimes it'll be doing things that you just don't enjoy, like doing your BAS statement or your quarterly return, making sure you invoice all your clients, or looking and trawling through emails. If that's all you're doing and there's no enjoyment for you, why are you in business? You might as well go and work for someone. You must remember those reasons you went into business and build in some time to reflect and enjoy what you do. If your great moments are spending time with the clients you enjoy, make sure you factor in some time every week or certainly every month with those people, even if you don't charge them, even if it's just a catch-up phone call. And you'll think, this is why I'm doing it. I really like these people I work with. I really like seeing how their business is growing. I like the fact I've made a contribution. I like the fact that we now have another 10 members that have joined our community-based gym. Make sure you revel in that moment and enjoy the success, because you'll enjoy it. Yeah. The most successful people in life are the ones that wake up every morning saying, I can't wait to get to work, or I can't wait to get back into my business. And they do that because they enjoy it. And part of that is having a balance. If you're raising a family, doesn't matter what stage that family's at, including elder parents that you might be caring for, make sure there's a balance. There will be times when you'll have to put them first. Your clients should value the time and the connections they have with you. It should be timely and meaningful, but they shouldn't own you either. And make sure that you've factored in that time as you do with any planning. And as I said at the beginning, find someone who's a suitable mentor, someone who's experienced, someone who's a wise head, someone who speaks your language culturally, or even just in terms of the things you feel comfortable with, and someone who's not afraid to tell you when you've got it wrong, and someone who you will listen to. These are gold, these people. They're absolute gold.
While you are on the topic of mentoring and seeking advice and everything, we did have one question come in prior, which was around when is it a good idea, or when do you know that it's a good idea in your business to start to seek advice from someone else or another professional on the development of the business?
Well, I think that relies on having some insight. Sometimes it will be because the bottom line or one of the bottom lines isn't being fulfilled. I think having a really open and transparent customer feedback loop is very helpful, and review what people are saying. Those things will tend to tell you that you've got a gap in your business that you need some work with. I say if you're starting a business, once you've got your values, your goals, and your business plan set up, that's when you should be getting a mentor. But if you haven't done that from the beginning, those touch points where you feel like there might be a problem, absolutely. The other thing is that a dangerous time in business can be when you're actually succeeding and you're doing really well and you're about to grow to the next level. So many small businesses don't make the transition into a medium-sized one. Really successful ones, particularly in the building game, fail at the next step. And most of that is about not having a mentor who talks about the change in cost outlays that occur, for example, or the growing of your staff when you go from 1 or 2 people that you've got a very solid relationship with to 5 or 6 people that you're trying to manage remotely. The growth in expectations from government and various other statutory authorities once you become a certain level. Once you start being eligible, or more to the point, being required to charge GST. These are all moments when you should be reaching out to a mentor. Again, someone that offers something that's different to you, but talks your language.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I mean, we were talking before as well about those 6-month touch points as well. So, you know, they're also great times to put in your diary to review things as well and readjust that. We are nearing time, so I'll just get you to touch on a little bit more about yourself and where everyone can find you and get in contact if they do have any more questions.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, Catherine, and thank you for the people that have been connecting with us today and for those that will listen to it later. We provide a business advisory service. It might be in the planning side of it. It might be providing that support for the management or growth of your business. My personal expertise comes in around workplace agreements, industrial relations, human resources, establishing policies, procedures. We work very well in improving both business and individual performance. And one of the things that I've been brought into during my working history is assisting people in change management. It could be growing the business. It could be, unfortunately, closing down a section of the business. It could be the fact that you now need people to be educated and trained in a different area. We're very good at mediating and complaint handling. I spent many years working in places like the Equal Opportunity Commission, the State Ombudsman's Office, the Health Rights area, in local government where you might have issues and you don't want to go to a very legal and litigious, expensive process, or just helping businesses to respond when they've got an issue. It might be a customer or an aggrieved employee. And of course, that rather complex and fairly dry area of work health and safety, providing solutions for your business. And we can help you not only do that in a documented way, not only in the structure and the governance, but through either that one-on-one mentoring, that coaching, improving the organisation and individual performance through guided training and development, and also more general training for either the organisation, if it's a not-for-profit, or one that you're involved with. You might actually be on a board or a sporting community that needs some training in areas like work health and safety, equal opportunity and anti-discrimination, risk management, bullying and harassment, a range of things around customer complaints. So that's who we are, and if you want to contact us, we're out there. My mobile number's known by a lot of people. I don't care when you ring. We've got the traditional emails, we've got Facebook, and we're also very active on LinkedIn. And my business colleague, Judy Bemmer, is there as well. Judy helped me with today's presentation. She could follow up if you've got any inquiries, and her mobile number is there as well.
Beautiful. Lovely. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Adrian. I will invite anyone else who does have a quick question to ask it in the chat box now before we do go. I did just have one more question that did come in, which we'll try to quickly answer within a minute. And it's just about outsourcing and how you know when to outsource some elements of your business to someone else instead of investing your own time or paying yourself to do it. This could be whether it's outsourcing someone to do your social media, to do your financial planning, your admin, or maybe even like high-level strategic planning. When do you know when to outsource?
Yeah, well, again, that's part of that growth cycle and that planning cycle. I reckon there's two parts to this. The first thing is the decision. It's when you don't have the in-house expertise, or it's not an area you enjoy. Go back to the enjoyment thing. I'd never outsource mediation because I love it.
Yeah.
So don't outsource the things that you're in business to do. And secondly, make sure that if you're getting expertise in, that you understand it. So don't just hive it off to them and say, I've got an IT person who deals with all that. Because unless you understand what they're doing around the basics, you'll fall foul of it. You need to keep a connection with them so that they're reporting to you. It doesn't matter what you're talking about, whether you're talking about state government or whether you're talking about a small business. If you've outsourced part of your business, they are seen, for all intents and purposes, as being your business. Make sure their values connect with yours. Make sure the agreements you've got in place are clear about reporting and expectations. And like everything in planning, keep reviewing them. If you outsource something and they let you down and you don't have any cause of redress, that's a business problem. if you outsource something in your business that delivers something to your clients and they provide bad service, that's your reputation.
Yeah, brilliant. And I love that tip that you said as well around, you know, is it something that you enjoy too? I think that that's really important stuff around businesses, making sure that you enjoy. You've touched on that a few times. Beautiful. Well, that's the end of our session today. We have already had someone to say that that's great advice, so that's brilliant. Thank you again for joining us tonight, Adrian, and sharing your wealth of knowledge. We appreciate you providing us your time. Thank you also to everyone who has tuned into our chat with Adrian. We will send out a follow-up link in the upcoming days with the slides as well as the recording for you to watch back later or send to a friend. We are taking next week off. However, we will be back the following week on Thursday, the 23rd of July with our Navigating Challenges and Being Courageous in Chaos. This will be a panel event with 3 local talents to help us chat it through, and then the week afterwards we will also have Leading with Influence and Impact, which will be another presentation event by the lovely ladies at the Edge Leadership and Communications. Links to register will be available in the upcoming days along with the recording too, so hopefully we'll see you on the 23rd of July.
And thank you, Catherine, and thanks to Regional Development Australia. It's a great opportunity for me and Judy to showcase what we do. So thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you, Adrian. And see you all next time.